Ah, Demon Souls. The game that started it all. Hello everyone, and today we will be covering the Demon Souls Platinum, which is personally my favourite Fromsoftware Souls-like, and arguably the first. Now, technically speaking, the game we're covering today isn't the one that started it all. That's Demon Souls 2009 for the PS3, which I do own a really cool copy of, but it wasn't my first experience with it. I also couldn't get my modern Elgato working with my ancient PS3, unfortunately. Even then, technically, it was Kingsfield. That was the first Fromsoftware Souls-like, but a second-hand copy of that is very expensive, so we're going to conveniently ignore it. No, today we're going to be covering Demon Souls Remake for the PS5. While this is an extremely faithful remake, there are some slight differences in the trophy list. PSN Profiles has a 10-hour difference between the two, and also some extra collectibles, but more on that later. Anyway, we have a lot to cover, so we might as well dive straight in. The game opens to a straightforward tutorial that ends with a difficult boss that is designed to kill you instantly. Pretty common for a Fromsoftware game. However, in this game, you don't get a second attempt. The game just starts anyway. Thankfully, the Vanguard Demon doesn't have a trophy, though he does have some unique gear that you can only get for defeating him. And even if you do, you just die in a cutscene anyway. Glad to see FromSoft are still pulling this card all the way up to Sekiro. Anyway, our character dies and our soul is trapped in the Nexus. While we're trapped here, it would be a good time to point out that only 1% of my viewers have subscribed, so if a quarter of you subscribe right now, I'd be well over 1,000 subs, which is my goal for 2026, so please do consider subscribing if you enjoy this video. Okay, enough yapping, let's go kill some bosses. Since I got the platinum for the game long before I started making YouTube videos, I thought I'd just do a normal playthrough for some background footage. Since I normally do magic builds, I thought it'd be cool if I get out my comfort zone and do a strength build. It made me realise how fun strength builds are, and how they're much more fun and OP compared to boring and nerdy magic builds. Who wrote this? Anyway, I thought it would be appropriate to create the very embodiment of strength builds, so everyone meet John Bonk. This run was a lot of fun, and I'll take any excuse I can to do another Demon Souls playthrough. If you've ever watched a video on this game, you'll probably know that the level progression is a bit different from FromSoftware's other games. Instead of one big world, there are 5 small worlds broken up into 3 areas with their own bosses. World 1 is the only exception to this, as it has an extra final area for the boss after beating all other worlds. Though, technically you can do it before this, but it's not recommended. Understandably, we're going to be visiting all of these worlds and defeating all the bosses, but right now we only have the first one unlocked, World 1-1. 1-1 is pretty standard for a Fromsoftware game. A big castle, dudes in armour, a dragon on a bridge that breathes fire at you, and is designed to kill you as a troll for the first time you come through. Yeah, you can tell where Dark Souls 1 got a lot of its inspiration from. Being the very first world of the game, 1-1 is pretty easy. It ends with the Phalanx, which is a big blob, protected by smaller blobs with shields. This boss can be quite hard if you let the little blobs overwhelm you, but if you use a combination of fire bombs and fire grease on the main blob, then you'll get past it no problemo. Defeating the Phalanx gives us the Phalanx's trophy. The rest of the worlds in the Nexus have now opened up, but I decided to continue with this world and into 1-2 because it's also fairly easy. The boss here is the Tower Knight, who is just a big dude in armour with a bunch of normal sized archers around him. Usually, the best way to do this fight is to take out the archers before taking on the big guy, but there's an achievement for beating him without taking out a single archer. However, I forgot to do it on my first playthrough. This isn't too much of a concern because you'll need to do a minimum of 2 playthroughs anyway, one for each ending, so we'll just grab it on our way back through. We do, however, get the Tower Knight's trophy for defeating him. The path to 1-3 isn't open yet, so I decided to pivot to World 2, which is a bit easier anyway. Unlike World 1, World 2 is a massive system of caves and mines, complete with the miners from Elden Ring that have infinite poise, lava that kills you almost instantly, and everyone's favourite bold backstabbing NPC, but we'll see more of him later. The boss of World 2-1 is also pretty easy, the Armoured Spider. She does mostly ranged attacks, and any melee attacks are pretty slow and telegraphed, so you can either dodge them or get an 100% shield, and you'll be golden. Defeating her earns us the Armoured Spider's trophy. With 2-1 complete, we progress into World 3, which is very reminiscent of Bloodborne, and it even has annoying Mind Flayer enemies that do a grab attack. Anyway, 3-1 has got quite a few trophies for us to get. The first one is Time for Rolling, which requires you to cross the bridge where the ballista is firing. This is optional, and there's a way to disable the ballista, but I had to do this here, otherwise I'd have to do it in New Game Plus. It's actually quite easy if you make sure to roll when you first see the arrows and not when you think the arrows are going to get to you, and then it should be quite easy. The next is a dash of Sage, for rescuing Sage Freak, which is an NPC that teaches you magic. Finally, we get to the area boss, the Fool's Idol, but not before we kill this guy who would resummon the boss infinitely if we didn't take care of him. Fool's Idol is another boss with an achievement for winning in a weird way. Here we have to not hit any of our summons, and this would be a lot more difficult if there weren't some very obvious tells for which one is real. The most obvious one is that the clones have a health bar if you lock onto them, whereas the real boss doesn't. We quickly take out the boss, and we get the Not Fooled and Fool's Idol trophy for our troubles. Next, we head to World 4-1, which sucks. There's too many skeletons rolling at you, and they're very spammy and annoying. One saving grace is that you can do a skip in 4-1 to get the Regenerator's Ring, which heals you over time, and also to get back to the boss quickly. Another saving grace is that the boss, the Adjudicator, is really easy. The normal way to fight him is to keep hitting him until he falls, then hit the bird on his head with your sword. You can also range him from up high, which is funnily enough also how you get his bonus achievement. I'm using footage from my bow only run that I posted ages ago before this, since I'm now a melee wielding Chad and not a ranging scrub. Seriously, who wrote this? The Adjudicator dies, and we get the achievement One Shall Stand and the Adjudicator's Trophy. The last world we haven't visited yet is World 5-1, which is perhaps the very first Fromsoftware Poison Swamp level. And just like all of the other Poison Swamp levels, it is a huge pain. Thankfully, this level also has a pushover boss. Leechmonger is really weak to fire, so as long as you don't get hit by his life-draining leeches, and also prevent him from healing, you shouldn't have too much trouble. For beating him, we get the Leechmonger's Trophy. Right, all the easiest bosses are done, and we still haven't unlocked 1-3, so it's back to World 2. Unfortunately, the boss here is quite difficult. Flame Lurker is unusually aggressive compared to the other bosses in the game, and even in a small arena, he closes any gaps between you and him fast. He also does split fire and physical damage, which can also do a lot if you don't have any fire resistance. It's a good thing I did all of those other levels first, because that meant I was appropriately leveled and prepared when fighting him. On my original run, which was a magic run, this wasn't too difficult, because while he can close the distance fast, it's also quite easy to bait attacks and then run away and range him. In my strength run, I was a bit more worried about the boss, and I think I might have over-prepared. I got the Crushing Battle Axe, which can be used to stunlock him, and I indulged in a bit of magic scrubbery with the spell Water Veil, in order to boost my fire resistance. I only needed 10 int for this though, so I don't think John Bonk is officially considered a wizard nerd yet. I actually really struggled at first, because I was using a sword and shield, and most of his hits would decimate my stamina bar, so I used a secret weapon. I got my wife to do the boss for me. She's much better at melee in these games, and funnily enough, she does edit my scripts, so that's probably where all these jabs at magic users are coming from. After ditching the shield and going for a two-handed and rolling approach, my wife beat Flame Lurker on her second attempt, though it was literally down to the wire. For beating Flame Lurker, we get Flame Lurker's Trophy, as well as access to 2-3. I haven't explained yet, but the third area of each world doesn't have a run back and it's just a boss fight. Though, as usual, World 1 is an exception to this rule. So we get straight into the boss for 2-3, Dragon God. If you've never seen this boss before, he's basically a stealth puzzle boss, which is something of a rarity in future Fromsoftware games. They experimented a lot with puzzle bosses in this game, and I personally quite like it. Anyway, we have to sneak around his arena, pin him down with 2 harpoons, then deliver a finishing blow to win the fight. We get a bonus achievement, Fists of Legend, for delivering the final blow with the Hands of God fist weapons, which was actually quite annoying because I didn't have the stats to wield them, so I was only doing chip damage. We also get the Dragon's God trophy, and this also reminds me to give Flamelurker's soul to Blacksmith Ed all the way back in 2-1 to unlock boss weapon crafting. Unlocking the boss weapons gives us the Road to Possibilities trophy. With World 2 out of the way, I decided to jump back into World 1 and finally give 1-3 a go. There are a couple of achievements we can get here, and they mostly relate to NPC questlines. The Witch in the Tower trophy is obtained for dressing up as a fat official, tricking another fat official into lowering the staircase, and then killing him and freeing Yuria the Witch. She's another NPC that can teach magic as well as Sage Freak, so John Bonk is going to be ignoring her for the rest of the run. Next up is Bjor, who's a little bit like Siegmeyer from DS1, but a lot more useful. We rescue him from the dungeon here, and he shows up to help us with the boss. Also, I just want to point out that this isn't a phantom or anything. This is actually him here to fight the boss, which I think is awesome. Speaking of the boss, it's the Penetrator, who is as menacing as the name sounds. He's another pretty difficult boss, though at the end of the day, he still is a dude in armour, so he's not that difficult, especially with Bjor at our side. For beating him, we get the Penetrators trophy and Brothers in Arms for doing so with Bjor. Also, the Penetrator's armour is really cool, and I think the remake devs realised that because the process to get it is complicated. More on that later. Speaking of which, rest in peace Bluepoint. We hardly knew ye. Also, rest in peace to my dreams of a Bluepoint Bloodborne remake. Now, we technically could do 1-4 now, but that would be quite difficult, so it's over to World 3 to cross off another one. We fight the Man-Eaters at the end of 3-2. They're kinda like if you took the Bell Gargoyles from DS1 and made them way more annoying and put them in a smaller arena with way higher scaling. A pretty lame boss, but honestly very easy to cheese, and they also sometimes seem to just lose you in the boss fight. Very cool. We get the Man-Eaters trophy for beating them. Next is World 3-3 and the Old Monk, who is actually a player summon boss. This would be a lot more fun if you couldn't carry an absolute ton of heals in Demon Souls, as this just leads to the fight taking absolutely ages. Fortunately, you can just put the game into online mode and fight an NPC, which is way easier. For beating the Old Monk, we get the Old Monk's trophy. Also, funny story with this boss. Basically, any co-op sign or invasion in World 3 has a chance to be summoned as the boss in a random player's world. After the Platinum run, me and my wife did a co-op playthrough where I would be summoned to help with areas and bosses and whatnot. But one of these times I was actually summoned as the boss, and I won! Despite using magic, which is terrible in PvP, and a katana that broke like halfway through the fight. So, sorry to the random whose attempt I ruined, but I did get this really cool hat out of it, so it was worth it. I also did the Old Monk PvP on the Strength run, which is a lot easier than the Magic playthrough, especially because I had cracked casting and the Dragon Bone Smasher, which did hella damage. Anyway, we're going back to World 4. What's supposed to happen here is a familiar Baldy kicks you down a hole and you rescue Saint Urbane for the Ambassa trophy. However, in the Strength playthrough, he just didn't show up, so I had to jump down the hole myself. Maybe he's off work today or something. The boss of 4-2 is the Old Hero, who is a notable gimmick boss. He's blind and equipping the Thief Ring means he can't hear your footsteps, so you can basically stealth him. Being under the equip load limit and not getting greedy with your hits also helps if you're going for the stealth approach. This is one of those bosses where the area leading up to him is the real boss fight, and then the boss itself is a cakewalk, regardless of the type of build you're running. Beating him gets us the Old Hero trophy, and access to the Archdemon in 4-3. This Archdemon is the Storm King, a massive flying stingray. This is another gimmick boss, and if you played Dark Souls 3, you might recognise the Storm Ruler sword. We've basically got to hit it with these charge range attacks to do damage, and there aren't really any other ways to hit the Storm King, so this kind of derails most challenge runs. Funny story for this boss, on the strength run I didn't have enough carry weight to pick up the Storm Ruler, so I had to quickly throw my Dragon Bone Smasher into the vault so that I could actually pick it up and, you know, do the boss fight. Then I was able to do most of the fight in this little shack, and the Storm King can't easily attack you in this shack, so it was fine. But man, that first bit was a bit stressful. Anyway, this is another easy boss, and it goes down without any trouble, giving us the Storm King's trophy. The next trophy I got is a bit complicated, and it requires us to stay in World 4 a bit longer. We need to get to Pure Human Tendency for World 4, and we're there already, since we haven't died in human form in this world yet. Pure White Tendency spawns an NPC called Satsuki, who is looking for a sword called Makoto. The sword is in Patch's hole in 4-2, and Pure White Tendency allows us to grab it. Going back to Satsuki, you interestingly have a few choices. You can either give him the sword, at which point he'll attack you with it, while suffering a 1% health loss per second. Or you can keep it for yourself, at which point he'll attack you with his own sword. You can also walk up to him with it equipped, at which point he'll just immediately attack you. You can also, weirdly enough, store the sword with Thomas, and then he doesn't know that you found it. Be aware that you need to give it to him for the trophy worthy of the sword, so that's what I did on my first playthrough. And also be aware that killing him completes the event, which gives -3 points to World Tendency, which is useful if you want to get nearer to neutral, but annoying otherwise. This is true of all Pure White and Pure Black Tendency events, so be aware of completing them if you don't want the tendency to get closer to neutral. Anyway, back to the main progression, and it's time to go to World 5-2, the Swamp of Sorrow. No really, that's what it's called. The area is annoying, but it's not Blighttown annoying. The boss of 5-2 is the Dirty Colossus, who is very weak to fire, so naturally, on both playthroughs, I used a lot of fire. Easy peasy. For this, we get the Dirty Colossus trophy and access to the Archdemon of World 5, Maiden Estrella. The fight has an interesting gimmick because the actual boss is the girl sat all the way over there, who barely fights back. However, she has a stand. Garl Vinland hits hard, has a lot of health, and he can heal himself, so he's the real boss of this encounter. So what's the best way to deal with this fight? The answer is to totally ignore him. If you stand in this spot on the right side of the arena with literally any lightly upgraded bow, you can snipe Maiden Estrella while Vinland is stuck on the left side, unable to route to you. If you kill Maiden Estrella first, Vinland gives up, and you win the fight. Unless you really want to 1v1 Garl Vinland, I'd recommend doing this regardless of your build, which I absolutely did. I got really good at doing this from my bow only playthrough, which is one of my earliest videos on the channel. Funnily enough, there's also an achievement for doing the boss fight this way, which is May You Be Unharmed. And we also get Maiden Estrella's trophy for beating the boss. And finally, it's time to do the last world, 1-4. Before doing that, we quickly head back to 5-1 and in Pure White World Tendency pick up the Istarel, which gives us one of the few. Okay, now on to 1-4. We get past the dragon for the last time and we take the comically long elevator up, and we get into the sort of final boss of the game, False King Allant. Some people struggle with this boss, but I personally find him quite easy. Most of his attacks are well telegraphed, and if you're appropriately leveled, he doesn't do that much damage, nor does he have that much health. This is quite easy on the magic run, and very easy on the strength run, because I was able to bonk him on the head with my Dragon Bone Smasher a bunch, which always staggered him out of his big charge attack. Beating False King Allant gives us the False King's trophy, and unlocks the end of the game. But wait, there's more. Before finishing the game on my original run, I first went to get the required items to craft the Northern Regalia, which has an achievement associated with it. Component number 1 is the Demon Brand, which is guarded by Old King Doran, who in turn requires the Mausoleum Key from Ostrava, which we have. Also, interestingly enough, all he wants to do is test you, so all you've got to do is get him down to 75% health, and then he offers you the sword. Component 2 is the Soul Brand, which is near True King Alant, the real final boss. So, we'll have to go to the final area after all. True King Alant is a comically easy fight, but you need to be careful to not trigger the ending. Instead, teleport out back to the Nexus and you won't be forced into one of the endings. Alternatively, you could do this in New Game Plus once you unlock boss weapon smithing. The final component is the False King Demon Soul, which we already got from the False King a few minutes ago. We go over to Blacksmith Ed in 2.1 and craft it, giving us the weapon and the Legacy of Kings trophy. While we don't have much of a use for it at this point, the Northern Regalia is a really cool weapon, and it combines the gimmick of the Demon Brand, which does higher damage at evil character tendency and lower damage at good, and the Soul Brand, which does the opposite. So it does high damage at the two extremes, but less at neutral character tendency. Make sure you grab a few spells before going into New Game Plus, because if you're going for the All Spells trophy, it will take multiple playthroughs. I specially recommend Water Veil for fire damage reduction, Warding for a whopping 70% physical DR, and Firestorm for one-shotting bosses. Same with the Miracles. I recommend Second Chance, which gives you a second life, and Anti-Magic Field to prevent all magic in the area. Anyway, this is the point at which I decided to finish the game in my original run and go into New Game Plus. I picked the good ending, which weirdly enough doesn't have a trophy associated with it, but is required for a spell. Running through the game quickly in New Game Plus, I finally got the One Shall Fall trophy from beating the Tower Knight without killing any archers. The rest of New Game Plus goes on without much fanfare, and we reach True King Alant once again. We load up on spells and rings again, and this time we go for the bad ending, which does have a trophy, Seekest Soul Power. Right, time for New Game Plus 2, and some cleanup. The next trophy we get is the Sage's trophy, for getting all spells in the game. Technically, you could do this in 2 cycles, so long as you do the good ending first, which I did, but I got a bit preoccupied with getting the Penetrator's armour. More on that in a minute. The next trophy after that is the Saint's trophy, for learning all miracles. This can be done in 1 cycle, though uses the same souls as some spells, but again, I was a bit distracted. We get the King of Rings trophy for obtaining all rings, which is really easier said than done. Most are completely normal to find, but some are a bit complicated. The Faux Ring increases your damage by 20% as a Black Phantom, which is pretty good in PvP, but you have to do a really long quest from an NPC named Mephistopheles, where you assassinate pretty much every useful NPC in the game. You need pure black character tendency for this, and I'd recommend doing it right at the end of the new game cycle, if you can, since then the characters will respawn in the next cycle. And also I recommend searching up what NPCs she has hits for, as you will need to kill other NPCs such as world merchants in Worlds 2 and 5 to get to black character tendency. Conversely to the Foe's Ring, you can also get the Ally's Ring, which gives a 20% damage buff as a blue phantom. You can get this ring from the Monumental if you have pure white character tendency. The Providential Ring can be obtained by either trading a boss weapon with Sparkly the Crow, or by choosing it as a starting gift. So yeah, I originally chose it as my starting gift. The Ring of Longevity can be obtained by trading pure Bladestone, which is a very rare drop from one of the annoying skeletons in World 4. Alternatively, you can just buy the Digital Deluxe Edition to get it instantly. But I was a bit broke when I did my first playthrough, so I just grinded for it. But hey, if I get monetized this year, I'll spend my first YouTube paycheck on the Deluxe Edition, and do a Ritual Blade only run. On a serious note, if you watch this far, then you've already really helped me with my watch time and engagement stats, which really help boost this video in the algorithm, and I'd really appreciate it if you consider subscribing if you like this kind of content and want to see more. Comment and boss it down below, cause you're a real one. Thanks again, and let's finish this platinum. Anyway, all of those rings I just mentioned aren't that bad. They're obtainable in one playthrough, in theory, and you don't have to grind for them that much. The one that really sucks is the Ring of Uneven Scales. This requires you to trade a gold coin with Sparkly, and the gold coin is really rare. Like, Extra Life doesn't even have a drop rate for them rare. This took hours, and was a massive pain, but I got it eventually. Keyword being eventually. You used to be able to use this item to glitch your luck to like 80,000 and then use the Blue Blood Sword, which scales with luck, to one-shot every boss. But unfortunately this got patched in 1.004. Anyway, this was the last ring we got, so we got a trophy along with it. Alright, it's time to explain how to get the Penetrators set. This armor set was not in the original 2009 game, but people thought it was so cool that Bluepoint, rest in peace, added it as a super hidden secret for players to find. To unlock it, you first need to offer 25,000 souls to a statue in the Nexus to unlock Fractured Mode. This doesn't change the game at all, except the entire screen is mirrored, so it looks really weird, especially if you've played the game before. Then, while in Fracture Mode, you have to find 26 ceramic coins, which can only be found in specific areas in either pure white or pure black. On top of that, you can only get 13 per new game cycle, so you have to do a minimum of 2 playthroughs for this. I only discovered this in New Game Plus, hence why I did 3 playthroughs. Once you've got all 26, you can drop them for Sparky, who gives you the Rusted Key. This key can then be used to unlock a door, which itself is hidden behind an illusory wall in 1.3, which then gets you the armor set. The history of players finding this is really interesting, and Vati also did a really good video on it a few years ago, so I highly recommend checking that out if you want lore. It's a really cool armor set, and honestly, I think it's worth the grind. Anyway, we've got a couple more trophies to go, and they're both co-op related. These took a while because me and my wife only had one copy of the game and we didn't want to buy another one. But thankfully it went on PS Plus Extra a few years ago, so we decided to do a co-op playthrough and get the last remaining achievements for the Platinum. The first, Return to Form, was obtainable for helping a player beat a boss. The other one, Unwelcome Guest, is obtained for killing a player as a Black Phantom. And, at last, we get the Platinum Slayer of Trophies for getting all other achievements in the game. As I said before, Demon's Souls Remake is one of my favourite games, and my favourite Souls-like overall, so I absolutely love returning to this. If this video does well, I'll do a Platinum video on the original PS3 version, because it has a completely different list of trophies, though it's quite a bit buggier than the remake. As I said in the intro, I do own a really cool copy of it, but my PS3 isn't compatible with my newer Elgato due to copyright protection tech and HDCP. So I'll need to buy a really old one, or get an AV to HDMI converter to get it to record. But I'd love to make that video, so let me know if you guys want to see it. Demon's Souls Remake, unsurprisingly, is going straight into the S tier of my 100% tier list, second from the top. It's definitely my favourite, but Garden Warfare 2 was my first Platinum ever, so it holds a special place in both my heart and this tier list. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and as always, if you like this kind of content, please do consider liking the video and subscribing, so you don't miss out on any of my new content. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs by the end of 2026, and we're well on the way there, but every little bit counts. I'm currently working on 100% for a cool little incremental called Dixium, and a challenge run with a cool weapon I recently discovered in Elden Ring, so stay tuned. And as always, I'm still grinding towards the Save the World Platinum, and I'm now past the halfway point overall. Also, the Destiny 2 Platinum video is slowly being worked on, though I have no idea when it'll be out. Hopefully Bungie doesn't randomly shut it down midway through me writing the script. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and with that I will say Umbasa.